we've got something really cool today. What we're going to do is replace these Nerf bars that came with the 4Runner with some actual rock sliders. So this is very, very cool. These, as you know, are not rock sliders. These are just merely just steps. They're lightweight. If you hit anything on these would fold up. They're only attached by 3 brackets on each side. So they're very lightweight. They make a great step, but that's about it. These also can be used as a step, but what's more than that, these help protect the entire side. These are RCI Rock Rails. I got these off of Facebook Marketplace for about $650. They're very, very lightly used. I really like these for a variety of different reasons. One is that it's American made. 2, it is very heavy duty. 3, they only have the braces on one side. There's no L, and so they're very easy to install. And if you have a jack on the underside of the frame, it's very easy. It doesn't get into the way. And so you only have that flat surface there. The next reason is that the base is square tubing on all sides and then rounded here. I was looking for these for probably about a year or so, and finally these came up. The benefit with the kick out here is that on the back tire, it can kick out and around without hanging up on the back tire. This is DOM metal, very heavy duty. These are actually pretty good condition. They're very lightly used. There's just a tiny few little spots of some rust. So I'm going to get these prepared. I'm going to wash them, clean them up. I'm going to sand out any sort of superficial rust, and I'm going to put a nice fresh layer of spray paint on them. Now these did come as a base powder coat, but I'm going to cover it with a little bit of spray paint after I touch up. Now these are angled, so I did also want the angled ones because that also helps kind of push any sort of rocks and stuff out of the way as opposed to flat ones. It might be a little bit more difficult to step in and out of the 4Runner using this, especially since there's no top plate. But I kind of didn't want a top plate because in the winter, a top plate is just going to accumulate snow. And I kind of like the open where the snow is just going to fall right through. The round might get a little bit slippery in the winter. We'll see. I don't know. It's a little bit of an experiment. So let's get these prepared and eventually put them on. So basically all that I'm using to get some of the superficial rust off is this 3M sanding wheel. Now this is kind of a spongy, rigid, semi-rigid thing. So it's not gonna like dig into the metal, but it's gonna get some of the superficial rust off and make it nice and smooth and kind of prepare the surface for painting and priming. So basically this is all that I'm doing right here. On the end of a drill, regular standard drill. Just that little bit is smoothing this out and making it nice and polished. Now I'm going to wash it off really well, wash it with some water, let it dry out thoroughly, make sure everything is nice and clean, that there's no dust and dirt, so the paint has a good adhesion. That's the advantage of using spray paint, is that it's very easy to touch up, to clean up. I still think a powder coat base is good, but spray painting I think is definitely the way to go to keep them nice and touched up. So I'm going to first put Rust-Oleum primer on. This is the professional grade, twice the protection of bare metal, previous painted or rusted surfaces. So I'm going to use this as the base coat and touch up all the areas that are maybe some questionable areas. And then I'm going to put a new coat of high performance enamel black flat paint. I took a look at the bed liner and I thought about spraying these with bed liner. But then I saw on the forums a little bit that some of the bed liner can harbor a little bit of water in the little cracks and crevices and lead to rust. So I decided not to go with bed liner and went with flat paint instead. So 1 can of paint covered this actually really pretty nicely. I still have a little bit extra left in the can. When these dry, I'm going to flip them over and do the underside, and then primer will be done. So we got the rock sliders all primed up. It's dry now, it's been baking in the sun, everything is looking good. Now we're going to go ahead and cover with the black flat paint. I got 2 cans of this, and so 2 cans should be enough for a couple of coats of each. So I got these all nice and painted up. They're looking pretty good. What I like about spray paint is that you can just mask off the 4Runner when these are mounted, and you can do some touch up here and there. I'm gonna let these bake and dry for a while, maybe a good day or so, before we do anything else. So this 4Runner has been undercoated a couple of times, and so with that undercoat, there are multiple layers of undercoating in through the threads. So that's gonna clog up these bolts and make it very, very difficult to get these bolts into those threads. So what I have to do is basically spray a little fluid film into each threaded bolt slot. Just kind of gradually hand thread it in. Now I don't want to cross thread it. I want to make sure it is actually catching the threads. Then I need to do a couple of turns and then take it out. Take a wire brush, clean off the threads, and the threads are going to collect some of the debris. And I basically need to do that at tiny, tiny little increments to clean all that junk out. And I'm not going to use a big wrench. I'm only going to be using this. So this is a 13mm socket wrench. I'm only going to use this because I don't want to put a whole lot of torque on there. When I feel like it's getting hard, then I just go ahead and stop, and then I go ahead and back that bolt out. I don't want to shear off a bolt, and I don't want to cross thread. I don't want to mess up any of the threads on both the bolts or the holes. So it's a long, tedious process to go around and do each individual bolt, but that's what we got to do to not screw it up. So here I sprayed a little bit of fluid film into this. Okay, I can get it in a few threads, so I know it's not cross-threaded. It's threading in nicely there. I'm just going to do this until I feel a little bit of resistance. I'm going to back it out. Now I'm going to clean off the threads with this wire brush, get some of that debris off of there. Spray a little bit more fluid film in. And kind of repeat the process until I can get that bolt all the way in. So it's not a fun process, but it's what we got to do. All right, that job was not fun, but you can see all the junk that I got out from all of those threads. And so now each bolt threads in very nicely. I coated them all with fluid film again. So now each bolt goes in very nicely now. And I think even though that took like an hour and it wasn't very fun, I think that'll save me a lot of time and headache when I put the rock rails on. One thing that I noticed while I was under here cleaning out the threads is that I do have a dent on this control arm bracket, and also one of the skid plates is fairly dented up. So I guess it's kind of nice to see that is actually functional and working well. Makes me think that maybe someday I should upgrade my Under Armour. The next step we're going to do is going to remove these Nerf bars. These are held in by bolts, not very many, so it should be fairly easy to get off. Here's the last look of these Nerf bars on here. Kind of sad to see them go. I did use them quite a bit. I liked them, but it's time for them to go. cut that off. So each one of these holes, I'll spray some fluid film in there. I'll scrub it up good with a wire brush, spray fluid film, and then put a plug in each one of those to keep those nice and clean. And the plugs come from this kit that I got. I can put a link of this in the description below, but it's nice to have a good assortment of all sorts of plugs. So I'll just use that and keep those holes nice and clean. If you're wondering how heavy these are probably about maybe 35, maybe 40 pounds each side. So that's going to add anywhere from 70 to 80 pounds total weight. The Nerf rails that we took off are super lightweight, maybe 5 pounds each, something like that. So probably a net gain of 50 pounds, 60 pounds or so. These are starting to look really good. In case you're wondering how to position this, just take a look here. There's an up and a forward arrow, and you can tell by this one because the kick out is in the back. And so this is the passenger side. I was wondering if those little rubber plugs or those little plastic plugs in the frame actually need to be removed when you're placing rock rails on. And I researched it a little bit and I came across an older video by Westcott Designs. And what they were talking about is that yes, you do need to remove those plugs off of the frame where it comes into contact with the rock rails. And the reason for that is that you want this metal to sit absolutely flush against the frame. If it's off even just a couple of millimeters, it's going to end up bending and also adding kind of like almost like a torque lever and a higher risk of bending or impacting the frame or bending the rock rails. And so when you have them very tight, adhered to each other, they act more as a single unit rather than separate. So that's the reason why you want them completely flush. So I have these lined up here and I'm going to see which plugs do I need to remove, because I don't think I need to remove all of them. There are some cutouts here. And especially on the driver's side, there's several that you don't need to remove. And I just have a pry tool and I will remove some of those. And then I'll coat a layer of fluid film and then we'll go ahead and get these installed. With this cutout here, this is the passenger side. I don't think I need to remove this plug or this one. This is the brake line here, and this will have to be taken out. And see this little metal tab right here? That tab is actually going to fit right into here. And so with this big cutout, I think I'm going to go ahead and leave those two in there. But I do need to take out pretty much all the others on this side. So in this kit, it comes with a variety of pry tools that you can use. I kind of like this one because it seems more sturdy and you can get some good leverage on there to pop those caps off that frame. So we leave these two and take this one out. Let's just see how easy this actually is. Well, that was pretty easy. Probably not going to use them again. Now taking a look at the driver's side, it's very different. There's not this continuous plate. There's this big cutout right here. And so we have this notched going up to where these two are. That's going to basically be where these two bolts are. So that cutout means that I probably can leave that in place. That one, I probably will need to take out this one, but I could leave those two because there's the cutout right there. This slot for that brake line, similar to the passenger side, that's that bolt right there. Now the next step is just to loosen this bracket for this brake line. We don't need to move this a whole lot. We just need to lift it off so we can slide the rock slider in, and then that's it. So this is 12mm bolt. I don't know if that bolt is going to be long enough to even fit in there. So we'll just use one of these longer bolts to go right in there. I already loosened these yesterday and put fluid film all inside and cleaned the dirt and debris out of there. And so they're very easy to take out right now. All right, that bolt is out. So you might be trying to do this yourself. And so what seems to work pretty well is having two 5-gallon buckets. And then this is a little bit thicker than a 2x4. That might actually be an actual 2 inches right there. So a 5-gallon bucket with 2 inches, and that's pretty decent. It lines up fairly well enough where I can at least get 1 or 2 bolts in the front. And then I can use that as a lever to adjust where I need on the back relatively easily, and then get a bolt or 2 in the back. Once I get those tightened down, then I can put all the others in. But this is really easy. You don't have to mess with the jack or anything like that. I only have like this bottle jack, so I don't have, you know, fancy stuff to adjust the height. But this actually works really pretty well. 5-gallon bucket and wood. And once I get that bolt in there, I'll be able to lift this up as high as it can go, so we don't have this little lip right here, so it'll actually sit relatively flush to the bottom of that frame. But before I do all that, I need to pull this back and spray fluid film all along the frame. And then I'll also spray the back of this to make sure it's nice and coated. Remember, we're going to put anti-seize lubricant on this bolt. You can kind of see I put it on there. So that's what that silver is all the way around the bolt. I have the washer on there. So we got that one bolt in right there. You can see how I pushed it upwards, so the bottom is fairly flush or even a little bit above the bottom of the frame. So now I will use that as a pivot point to raise the back and put a bolt in the back. Before I put all the bolts in, I did notice this. So you see how that little cutout is including the top portion of that plug. So I'm going to have to pry that plug up because we can't have it angled a little bit. That plug has to be out so this can sit flat against there. So I'll take that out. I'll probably have to loosen this bolt a little bit and pry that out. See, there's a good, you know, inch of clearance here for the door to open. You want to make sure that that looks good. So that looks great. I actually didn't have to loosen that bolt at all. I could just pry this out, clean that up a little bit, and then spray fluid film all around it. So just one little tip. All of the bolts that came with this, they're used. And so I put them in a Ziploc bag and had them just soak in fluid film overnight. Now when I take them out, I can just kind of clean them off, and you can just kind of see the dirt and grime that's coming off of these old used bolts. But once they're cleaned up, they actually look really pretty good. Pretty nice. No strip threads or anything like that. And again, I'll put the anti-seize lubricant on here. I have the washer already on. Some people will put Loctite on here. I don't have any sort of problem with the anti-seize lubricant backing out or anything like that. So I don't use Loctite on this. I'd rather be able to get them out decently. I don't think there will be any sort of issue with just this. So one thing that I'm pretty happy about is how we cleaned out all those holes the other day. Now we can easily just thread these in, and we know that we're not cross-threaded. They go in a fairly decent amount. We know that that's nice and solid and pretty easy to get in there. So that's really, really good. Now this one, I can't get the wrench on here, so I'll have to use a flat wrench instead of a socket wrench to get that. So we just continue on down the line here, putting bolts in wherever we can, and then we will go ahead and tighten all of those down once we know that everything is set and our final adjustments are made. After I went through and double checked all the bolts, tightened everything, and then retightened everything to make sure, because sometimes when you tighten one end, it might loosen a little bit on the other end. It wasn't significant of an issue here. Pretty much everything is nice and tightened, hand tight, about as tight as it'll go, to the point where it was kind of lifting the vehicle up a little bit. So that's about how tight I did it. And this is looking really, really, really good. Under here, you can really kind of appreciate the angles and how close everything really is. It really fits in there awesome. And I think it looks good, nice and sleek. I'm glad we got the 20-degree angle on there. That looks very, very good, nice and sleek. So there are 10 bolts. Don't forget that one way up there above that brake line. It's a little bit hard to get at, but you can do it. 10 bolts on each side. I'm glad it doesn't interfere with that rock light. While you're under here, you can see those catalytic converter shields, one on each side. Those are the Cali raised catalytic converter shields, and I have to say those are holding up really, really nice. No problems there at all, no rattling, they're not loose, they're not warped from the heat. I mean, everything is looking real good there. So I'm glad that I got those. If you're interested in seeing a video on how I installed those, I'll put a note up in the upper corner where you can see how I installed those. There's also a link for those in the description below. I have to think that that does improve the strength of the frame. I mean, that's 1/4-inch steel adhered to the frame. I mean, that's got to make everything more stiff and more solid. All right, now let's go do the other side. So we got what we need. We have 10 bolts, 10 washers, fluid film, a wire brush, anti-seize lubricant, a wrench for those harder to reach areas, and a 13mm socket. I already got all the plugs out. Got that plug out. That one we're leaving in. And I already have that brake line loosened up. I'm just going to spray it all along here. I know the rock slider doesn't touch the center area, but I like fluid film, and I'm going to put it there anyway. Now I'm going to spray the inside of that rock rail, get the buckets, and prop it up here. All right, so we're finishing up this driver's side rock slider, and this one is maybe a little bit more difficult, even though it's lighter weight and easier to line up. It's a little bit more difficult because the bolts are a little bit harder to access, and I'll show you that right here. So on the front, I have 4 bolts. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on the back, I have 6 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One important thing is that when you tighten that bracket up there for the brake line, you want to make sure that it's still has some space here for the brake line here, and it's not rubbing up against this. The most difficult bolt is that top one right here. It's very, very difficult to access, and you can see I don't have it tightened down all the way. I'll show you what I am having to do here. So you can first see the problem here is that because there's this thing in the way, you can't really get this on the head of the bolt because the head of the wrench is hitting up against there. So what I had to do is first just use this wrench and just turn it a little bit there, and then have to go up here and turn it a little bit more. And I had to keep doing that over and over again about 1.5 million times until I was able to get this with the extension up and around like this at enough of an angle like that where I could then make tiny little turns to get it the rest of the way. All right, this side is wrapped up now. I had to use the wrenches that I had in the back of the 4Runner in this pouch in order to access that last bolt. This is a cool tool bag that I got off of Amazon. and I always keep it in the back of the 4Runner here. I can put a link to that in the description below. It's very cool. I use it quite a bit. So I've had these rock sliders on for about a week now, and I really like how they turned out. It just kind of changes the entire look, the whole profile of the 4Runner. I really like how it looks. Before I installed these, I had a few questions that I didn't know, and I was looking on the internet to try to find out the answers to them, and it was kind of difficult to find the answers. So I just wanted to go through a few of the questions that I had before installing this that you might find helpful. So the first question is, does this clear the door pretty well? And the answer is yes, it does. You have a good inch or so of clearance on both the front and the rear. You just don't have to worry about clearance here at all. And I think that kind of goes along with a majority of rock sliders at the 20-degree angle. You just don't really have to worry too much about clearance of opening and closing the doors, especially if something gets bent a little bit. I don't think these are going to get bent a little bit. And so you just don't have to worry about clearance. The next question is, can you use this as a decent functional step to get in and out, as opposed to the regular Nerf bars or running boards or actual steps? And the answer is yes. These actually work pretty well as steps. No problems at all. I can use these steps to get in and out really easily. Other people, kids, can get in and out really easily. No problem there at all. Now, I don't know what it'll be like in the winter with the rounded edges to see if this will get slippery and slick with ice on there. So I guess we'll just have to see that. They can be used functionally as a step really well. The next question is, do I notice an increase in weight, in change in handling in the 4Runner? And the answer is no. There's just no difference in weight here with how the 4Runner handles. There's no difference in weight as far as the suspension sinking down even more. There's no difference there at all. No noticeable difference. The next question is, without the top plates, is there a chance that somebody, some little kid, is going to get their foot stuck down in here as they're coming out of the vehicle and then break a leg or something like that? And I think it's really, really, really unlikely for that to happen. The openings here are very, very small, and I don't think the way that they are angled, you would almost have to angle your foot and deliberately try to angle it in there on purpose in order to actually get a foot stuck in there. Now, a dog might be different. A dog jumping up or down, they certainly could get their leg stuck down in there, and that might actually break a leg. So you want to be careful about that. If you have a dog, just be sure that they don't use this as a step. I think most dogs wouldn't, but just keep that in mind. The next question is, if the doors are closed, is there enough room on here that you can use this as a step in order to reach your top roof rack? And the answer is yes, especially with the kick out here. And I think that's another big advantage with this kick out, is that it does give you extra placement, extra footing there to put your foot. And so it's much, much easier to use this kick out as a step without any sort of top plate on there, even at that 20-degree angle. So you can use this as a step and you can reach the top really easily without any sort of problem. Now, reaching the front, that's a little bit different because it's fairly shallow here. And so you could probably get your toes on here, but you're not going to get good solid footing. So I personally kind of like not having the top plate. I like being able to have snow and junk fall right through without any sort of accumulation on that top plate. I kind of like the look of this without the top plate, and it just looks a lot more sleeker. Overall, I really like these rock sliders. They turned out really well. Super impressed with them. If you're considering rock sliders, take a look at the RCI rock sliders. They're affordable and they are solidly built. I did see these on Facebook Marketplace, and chances are you could probably find some used somewhere. So if you like this video, go ahead and subscribe, share it with anyone else who might be considering rock sliders. Subscribe if you haven't already and give this a thumbs up. It really helps support the channel. Thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate it a lot, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.